R2D2 and C3PO aren't useless as you may think. So R2D2 and C3PO sometimes get a bad rap, but they are actually so important for so many reasons that we'll discuss in this video. Let's talk about why R2 and 3PO have been criticized. Well, of course, these characters are comic relief characters, and while they are companions to our protagonists, they don't necessarily have major effects on the plot of the movies. So one criticism that gets thrown around a lot about both these droids is that they are just annoying. Now for R2, that's his beeping. I seriously hope people aren't that bothered by it, but he does make a lot of droid noises. One scene people commonly refer to is when Anakin crash lands the invisible hand, and R2 makes a long, high-pitched noise, twice in a row. Now, I don't really have a rebuttal for this because yes, I get it can get a little annoying at times, but I do want to give credit instead for something that is underlooked, and that is, somehow at Lucasfilm they managed to make R2's beeps and noises have emotions. What I mean by this is in A New Hope, when R2 and C3PO land on Tatooine, R2 always makes these beeps that seem just frightened. It makes R2 feel like he has his own personality. But that's not the only time they do this in Star Wars. R2 being scared, or mad at C3PO, or confident. Sometimes you can feel what R2 feels in the movie. While it is difficult to describe the feeling, it's something we all get when we watch these movies. Now it may surprise you, but I have seen a lot of criticism that R2D2 is overpowered. This is surprising because it's not a small number of people who believe this. There's a noticeable difference in R2D2 skills and the skills of an average R2 unit or any astromech. People do say that R2's skill set should be the same as any average droid, though it's totally reasonable that he got reprogrammed or at least modified when he entered the service of a Jedi. But to play devil's advocate, let's disregard the idea of him being reprogrammed. What is interesting is that R2 did get special physical modifications. He got improved rocket boosters on his legs so that he could fly for a longer duration. To provide context, in the Clone Wars TV show, R2 was tasked to participate on a mission along with other astromechs, a pit droid, and Colonel Gaskin to steal an invaluable Separatist data module. Every droid played a part, and it was thought necessary to give R2D2 improved rocket jets for him to play his part correctly. Now for him just being smarter and more talented than other droids, well, of course, that's probably just plot armor, but I do like to think that R2D2 and C3PO, as well as any droids, pick up traits and talents from their owner. And R2 and 3PO did have an exceptional owner. 3PO, well, he gets a little more hate. He gets called annoying and extremely useless. People think his one-liners are unnecessary. They think he's annoying and so fragile and scared. Which, yes, he is those things, but he's also loyal. We do see so many times that even when he's required to help people, he's scared and wants to just run away, but we see that even though he's frightened, he will help save his friends because it's the right thing to do. Most people don't have problems with these characters, but surprisingly, there are a lot of Star Wars fans that like serious Star Wars. They don't want to laugh, and I just don't get that. But of course, there has to be a good balance, as the sequels felt like a really bad sci-fi comedy movie. And of course, I don't need to get into that because people have already done extensive research on that topic. Now, besides just being characters that can break the tension and make us laugh, they have a larger purpose that's difficult to see if it was even intended. Even though Lucas tried to make Star Wars straightforward and easy to understand, it was still a sci-fi universe with crazy planets, crazy aliens, and crazy stories. And when people watch Star Wars for the first time, you can't help but be confused. When watching any sci-fi movie, you always have questions running through your head. Like, who's that? Where is this? Or why are they even doing that? So we know that the director of the film wants you to connect with the characters, and somehow we all connected with the comedy relief characters like 3PO and R2, because at the start of A New Hope, this was the first time anyone had ever seen the movie, and people were certainly lost and confused. And so were 3PO and R2. Through the beginning of the movie, 3PO kept making comments that reflected his confusion, and the audience felt the same way. But as the movie went on, we slowly see that the audience learns more, and so does the droids. At the end, us and the droids all had a mutual understanding of what happened. A really great example of this was in Return of the Jedi. So we already had A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So we already knew what the universe was like. But in the beginning of Return of the Jedi, we see R2 and 3PO walking to Jabba's palace. And of course, the first question in everyone's head is, why are they walking to Jabba's palace alone? And that sounds stupid, right? So 3PO expresses that opinion. It makes the audience feel like the writer and director understand how us, the audience, feel in that scene. And it kind of reassures us that everything will be explained soon. Lucasfilm also did this with Jar Jar. While he did make maybe a little more than couple funny, humorous comments, he served a similar purpose that R2 and C3PO did. In the beginning of The Phantom Menace, people didn't know what to expect. It had been 16 years since the last film. People thought, oh, we're going to see young Darth Vader. But that didn't even come until 30 minutes into the movie. Obi-Wan felt different. Who the hell is Qui-Gon? And what is with his weird politics? But then we met Jar Jar. Jar Jar was goofy and stupid, but he also reflected the audience in the beginning, as he was completely clueless of his surroundings, which initially didn't make sense because he lives on Naboo. But then later the audience learns that he lives under the water. So these characters are more important than just one-liner comedy relief characters that we see in many other films and shows, because they share the same confusion we have when watching a sci-fi movie. And while the characters we connect to the most are the heroes and villains, we do just feel like droids watching this amazing story from the sideline. What's interesting is these characters, R2, 3PO, Jar Jar, are also similar to another character, and this is a cartoon character. The prequels had Jar Jar for comedy relief and relatability. The originals had R2 and 3PO, and that's all they needed. And the Star Wars shows were cartoons, so they could be lighthearted, right? Well, yes, but the Clone Wars did get dark at times, and that's where Hondo Ohnaka came in. See, in a lot of the darker episodes that covered death and greed and dark topics, some of them included Hondo. And obviously I'm not saying that every time something got dark, that Hondo's ship showed up. But what I am pointing out is that Hondo would come in when things would get too complicated. See, the problem with most cartoons out there is it's only for kids. Recently, in the last few years, there's been a noticeable push in cartoons for adults, or at least elements that are inserted into cartoons for adults to enjoy. But the Clone Wars was way ahead of its time, but it was a little different. I think the Clone Wars was created towards teenagers or older people, and they made it a cartoon and added goofy characters for the children. The thing is, so many cartoons, including ones that are made for adults, exist to tell a fun story and just make you laugh. But the Clone Wars aren't here for that. It's a show about a war, and to give context to Anakin's fall, but most importantly to better represent the whole plot of the prequels, which was the fall of democracy. And Hondo is great because he shares many of the great traits R2 and C3PO and Jar Jar have. We also see how Hondo changes from his time with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and Hondo is great because he just likes the simple things in life, primarily money. He's like a cool Watto but with a personality, and it's really cool to see a character with such simple motives in a story with such a complex plot. To end this video, I want to say that the best part of the relatable comic relief characters is that they change throughout the story. And I know that's not something to give applause about, but it's different to so many other comedy relief characters, as the ones mentioned above change with the people they are with, but still serve the same purpose and represent the audience feelings throughout the films. No one out here is saying George always made the right choices, but his ability to personify robots and make them change and adapt while still being comedy relief characters is something he should be credited for, of course, with his many other long lists of achievements and dramatic changes he made to the film industry itself. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the importance of R2 and 3PO. I hope you look at R2 and 3PO a little differently after this video, as maybe you will see them differently than just two shiny droids. Hopefully you can even notice more of their positive effects than what was stated in this video.